Hi everyone, welcome to Caltex Academy. Today we're looking at solution to quadratic equations using graphical method. So in our previous episode, we looked at three different methods ranging from factorization, completing squares, and formula method. So I've given some link to the description of this video. You can go ahead and watch those videos after finishing watching this one. So we have a question here. Question number 1 says, use graphical method to solve for x in x squared minus 3x minus 4 equals to 0, given that negative 2 is less than or equals to x is less than or equals to 5. What does it mean by having these numbers here? This is the range of values for x along x-axis. For us to solve a quadratic equation using graphical method, we are targeting at where the graph is cutting x-axis, because the variables here are the x. So where it cut the x-axis, it gives us the solution. Like here we'll have x1 and x2. So if this is our y-axis and this is x-axis, definitely this becomes our solution. Now, for us to move on also, we have to notice from this quadratic equation that if the coefficient of x squared is positive, then the shape of the graph is looking like this. But if the coefficient is negative, then the graph is N-shaped like this. So for here, we're expecting it to be U-shaped. Now without wasting time, let's dive in to see the solution of this number. So in the first place, we're going to make the arrangement of this range where we have negative 2, and then we have negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then we can flip up these three terms from our equation, starting with x squared in this column. So we have here x squared, then negative 3x followed in by negative 4 as a constant, and finally we'll get y here. So the combination of these two x and y will give us coordinates that can be plotted in our graph. Now we can see also that 4 is a constant, meaning in all this row is going to be constant everywhere. So let's write it to fill up all this column such that we shall not waste time while working out this number. Now let's move on to the first column here, and we have negative 2 substituting x. So negative 2 squared, we get positive 4. Then we move on here, negative 1 square, we get 1, 0 square is 0, 1 square is 1, and then 2 square is 4, 3 square is 9, 4 square is 16, and finally 5 square is 25. Then let's move to the next one. We replace x by negative 2 for this column. So we have negative 3 times negative 2, we get positive 6. Then we move on, negative 1 and negative 3, making 3. So 0 times negative 3 is 0. 1 times negative 3, we get negative 3. Then 2 times negative 3, we get negative 6. 3 times negative 3, we get negative 9. 4 times negative 3, we get negative 12. And finally 5 times negative 3, we get negative 15. So let's fill in the corresponding values for y in each of these x. Now to get that, we'll add all these black numbers together, because here we have these three terms. The left hand side equals to 0, meaning this function can be given in terms of f of x equals to x squared minus 3x minus 4. Somebody can write in terms of y equals to x squared minus 3x minus 4. So for that case, the sum of all these terms will give us the value for y. Now positive 4 and negative 4 will cancel, meaning we're having here positive 6. So with this, we have 1 and 3 adds together to 4, minus 4, adds 0 here. 0 plus 0 plus negative 4, we have negative 4. And then 1 minus 3, we have minus 2 plus negative 4, we have negative 6. And then we move on, 4 positive and 4 negative cancels, meaning we also have 6. And then 9 positive and 9 negative will neutralize, and we have here negative 4. We move on, 16 minus 12, we get positive 4, and then minus 4, that is 0. And then 25 minus 15, we get 10. 10 minus 4, we also get positive 6. So let's gather the coordinates together. So we have here negative 2, 6. And then the second part here, we have negative 1 for x and 0 for y. And then followed in by 0 for x and negative 4 for y. Then here, positive 1 for x, and then negative 6 for y. We move on to the next one. X value is positive 2 and y is negative 6. And then 3 for x, negative 4 for y, 4 for x and 0 for y, and finally 5 coordinate for x and then 6 for y. Now let's move on to the next page and copy these points so that we are able to plot them on the graph in the Cartesian plane. Well, this is our Cartesian plane, and we have our points near here so that it is easy to plot. So let's go ahead and plot these points on this graph. Now the first point here is negative 2 and positive 6. So negative 2 for x-axis, positive 6 for y-axis. Their meeting point is here. So we can give a dot and a small circle around it. And then let's move on to the next point, that is negative 1 and 0. So negative 1 and 0 is somewhere here. We make this plotting and also make some cycle. The third point is 0 and negative 4. 0 for x, negative 4 is down on y-axis. So we also do the same, cycling our point. Then next, 1 and negative 6. 1 for x, negative 6 for y. So this is our point. Can make a circle around. Let's move to the next point, that is 2 and negative 6. So 2 for x, negative 6 for y. We have our point, and we also cycle. 3 for x and negative 4 for y. They meet around here, so we have that point. Then circle. 4 and 0 is on x-axis, and I'm seeing good news already. These points that lands on x-axis will give us the solutions. So finally 5 for x and 6 for y. So we go up here, that is where they meet, and we plot it here. After finishing plotting, then we have to join these lines using a smooth freehand line. You might excuse me because I'm using digital technology here. It's a little bit not smooth like a paper, but let me try to join these points together. So let's move on and set here. Then we can also join this point to what we have here. Okay. Though it is not all that very smooth, but at least you get the idea. So we can move on. I think we need to also plot beyond, because there could be many numbers that will go beyond up there, and even this side here there will be many numbers. So we can continue joining this together. It's a little bit challenging for points that are not close together. But we are about to finish. Yeah, this is our graph. Don't look very smooth, but don't worry. And we have to give the name for this graph. So the name of the graph here is having x squared minus 3x then minus 4 equals 0. So that is the name of our graph. So since I mentioned earlier on that the values of x can be obtained from the graph when the curve cuts x-axis, so we can see from here that the curve is cutting x-axis at x1 and x2, meaning that is the solution for our work. Therefore x1 equals -1 and x2 equals +4. By the way, we can also check these answers to see using another method. So let's have a look. Assuming we use factorization to check to see whether we can get exactly the same answers here. So we can copy our question here where we have x squared minus 3x minus 4 equals 0. Now we can take the constant -4 and look at two factors that when we multiply should bring for us -4, and when we add together we get -3. The factors are -4 and +1. So we can use these factors to rewrite our middle term, and we shall have here x squared, we can say plus x minus 4x minus 4 equals 0. Now we can pair them up and factorize. So the first pair is having a common factor of x. After pulling out x, we shall have x in our term 1. Then here we're left with 1. Now the common factor here is -4. So we can pull out, of course, and we shall be left here with x, then plus 1. That's that if we open up this bracket, we can get exactly what we have here. Now let's form brackets of the coefficient, and we also pick this identical bracket and we can place it here. So you're free to take any. You can start with this one, no problem, or you can start with the coefficient, no problem. So we have here x and -4. So we'll solve this small equations, we get -1, and then when we solve the second one, x is equals to +4 as before. And we are sure that these results are perfect because we've also proved with a different method and still have the same thing. So if you're watching up to this time and you're not subscribed, please, I ask you to spend 3 seconds to like this video, share with friends, and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss my upcoming videos. With this, let's go to the second number in the next board. As before, this number is also saying graph the equation -2x squared minus 2x plus 4 equals 0 for -3 is less than or equals to x, less than or equals to 2. Hence, use your graph to solve the equation. As I did mention earlier on, if the coefficient of the living term is negative, then the type of graph we are getting should be M-shaped. Now, is it true? Let us find out from our working. So let's go straight to our solution, and we have table of values. For our parabola, and that is -2x squared minus 2x plus 4 equals 0. Now we can do it as usual. We get our range of x-axis along the range of these x values along x-axis, that is -3 followed in by -2, -1, 0, 1 and 2. Then we can also do the same, splitting these three numbers here in this first column, and we have -2 x squared. The second one is -2x, then the third one is +4, and finally we need to get y here, and then lastly we have the points in terms of coordinate x and y. So we can move on and fill in these spaces, and it's a good practice to always fill out throughout this column our constant number, since we have here +4, then this +4 appears in all these columns. Now in our first column here, we can fill in using x values being replaced by the corresponding values for x in each of these columns. So we have here -3 replacing here x, so it's -3 squared, that is +9 times -2, we get -18. -2 squared is +4 times -2, we get -8. -1 squared is +1 times -2, we get -2. This one vanishes to 0. 1 squared is 1 times -2 is also -2. 2 squared is 4 times -2, we get -8. Now here we have -2 times -3, we get +6. Next, -2 times -2, we get +4. The next number, -1 times -2, we get +2. 0 times -2, it vanishes to 0. And 1 times -2, we get also -2. And lastly, 2 times -2, we get -4. So let's get the corresponding values for y by adding up all these three together. As before, we said y can represent the equation of this parabola, -x squared minus 2x plus 4. So the three numbers in black can be added together to get the values for corresponding y. So we can see 6 and 4, since they're positive, we can add them together, and we have 10. So 10 plus -18, we get -8. So let's move on to the next one. We have 4 making 8 minus 8, we get 0. And then -2 and +2 will neutralize, and we get here 4. 0 plus 4, we get also 4. -2 plus -2, we get -4. Plus +4, we also get 0. Then -4 and +4 will neutralize, and here we get -8. So let's collect together these points to form our coordinates that can be plotted in the Cartesian plane. So the first point here is having x with -3 and y with -8. The second one is having x as -2 with y as 0. The third point is having -1, 4. Then the fourth point is having x as 0 and y as 4. The second class is having x as 1 and y as 0. And finally, we have 2 for x and -8 for y. So with this, let's move on to the next board to find out our graph. and then we can plot all these points on that Cartesian plane to see how our graph will look like. Well, here's our Cartesian plane, so let's move on and plot our points as before. So the first point here is -3 for x and -8 for y. So it's down here, we can give some dot and a circle. The second point is positive -2 and 0, so it is exactly at this x-axis. Now whenever you plot something along x-axis, then you must know that is one of the solutions. And then next is -1 and +4. -1, +4, that's somewhere here. Followed in by 0 and +4. 0 for x, +4 for y. So that is where the point is. Then next is 1 and 0. So 1 and 0 is exactly at also x, and that is another good news for us. Finally, 2 and -8. 2 is here, and the -8 is just somewhere down here. This, and then we come up with something like this one. Don't worry about this zigzag line. What is very important is where our curve is cutting x-axis. So this one is fairly good, and we can move on and also join this point together. This one is also coming up fairly good. So just finished it, and then we give also the name of this graph, and the name was -2x² minus 2x plus 4 equals 0. So again, as we said earlier on, we said the answers will be where the parabola cuts x-axis. So we have here, we can also rename as before, x1 and x2 to get our answers. So finally, the first value that will satisfy this equation is -2, followed in by the second value that is +1. If you wish, you can also use another method like completing squares or formula method or factorization to check out that exactly the answers are this one here. If you are watching after this and have not subscribed, please do so, because I'm going to have some interesting videos that I will be uploading as soon as possible. So please don't miss out. Be there, stay tuned to the channel. See you in the next one. Peace out.